Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to another moment of reflection. There's some things that I'd like to speak about today, and I hope it doesn't take too long. Now, in his treatise on the colonial citadels, Franz Fanon wrote, "The Congo, which is the second landing beach of revolutionary ideas, is marking time. The Congo, which is the second landing beach of revolutionary ideas, is marking time." This is what Franz Fanon wrote in his treatise on the colonialist citadels. Okay, Nigeria is marking time just like the Congo. You see, Nigeria is running on the spot. And when you run on the spot too long, you run on empty because you run out of ideas. You cannot even win the battle of ideas. You try to sell something that does not belong to you because you're suffering from spiritual impoverishment. That is what is afflicting our people, among other things. This spiritual impoverishment is deep-seated in the psyche and the minds of our people as a result of human domestication by the adulterator. You can see what is happening all across Africa. African children are being kept in captivity by their own leaders. Leaders who are not willing to transform the material condition of the African people. They understand that Africa was never intended by the colonizer, by the imperialistic devils, to be countries that would industrialize, to be countries that would be seen as civilized nations that would sit beside other nations. No wonder that all the leaders in Europe and America, including Asian leaders, but particularly the so-called Western leaders, tend to look down on African people. They want to spit on you because of the African leaders. You know, leadership is supposed to be something that is inspirational. You have to be able to inspire your people. You see, to lead your people, you must be able to inspire them by the things you say, by leading an exemplary life, teaching the people the way to go, siding with the people in times of distress, and celebrating with the people in times of merriment. A leader is supposed to be in the midst of his people, looking at the people as he would look at himself, seeing the reflection of his tribulations in that of his people. That's not what we're seeing in Africa. African leaders have resigned themselves to this self-abasement that is totally unspeakable, totally unacceptable to any civilized human being. Walter Rodney, I keep on going back to this because our people don't read because they have time for every other thing except for things that are very important for their own upliftment, spiritual upliftment. They don't have time to uplift themselves in this world of materialistic perversity and self-interested deadweight. We're accepting everything because we don't know better. Is it really the case that we don't know better? These are people who have been victimized by the same types of problems that their parents suffered from. But our forefathers even had our forefathers had the bravery to fight. They were better than us in many ways. They did not have all these degrees that some of us claim to have today. But our foreparents were able to stand up like men and fight and died for their dignity. Their story has not been told. We are joining the oppressor to rejoice upon the demise of our forefathers. It's shameful. We ought to feel ashamed if we are not embarrassed by the things we do to our forefathers. We're chasing the oppressor. We're chasing the oppressor that is pouring scorn on the graves of our foreparents. Look at Nigeria. Look at Cameroon. Look at Ghana. Look at Guinea. Look at Senegal. Look at Rwanda. Look at Kenya with its new president called William Ruto, the Kenyan president, just like Tinubu in Nigeria. These are all individuals that are suffering from a very severe form of spiritual impoverishment. These are people who don't really understand, or if they do understand, then they're acting with some type of very perverse bad faith, working against their own consciences. You see, William Ruto went to Mozambique and he was condemning the coup d'etat in Niger. At the same time, he's using the democratic argument. He's speaking the language of his oppressor. You know, I've always looked at this William Ruto in a very, I've been very reserved with all the things he keeps saying on TV. I knew there was something about this person, this William Ruto. These are clowns. These are the African clowns. You see, Malcolm X would call them, you see, the house Negroes. They don't want to come out in the open and tell their people that, look, we are house Negroes. We are the people that have been put there to keep you in captivity. When the European cries, William Ruto cries. When the European says something, William Ruto repeats that, regurgitates it as if that's a social fact. William Ruto is talking about, condemning the coup that is on the ground that it is undemocratic, and he's supporting the ECOWAS to go and invade Niger. William Ruto is supporting the ECOWAS and is saying that the African Union has to expel Niger or any countries wherein coups are taking place. But he's forgotten that a coup d'etat is not necessarily military. You see, as long as there's institutional displacement that is not legal, that's a coup. So you have what you call the constitutional coups, or what they're calling the constitutional coups that are, done by civilians, people like Alassane Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire, including even the William Ruto himself. His presidency is contested in Kenya, as far as I know. It's pretty sad. When the oppressor articulates violence in a positive light, William Ruto will do the same. When the oppressor articulates democracy in a negative light, William Ruto will do the same. So when the oppressor says that the Nigerians have no right to ask for, a better treatment in their own country as far as their resources are concerned, William Ruto is among the people that are standing in the way of the African redemption. You see, we're standing in the way of sociological remediation or sociological rehabilitation of the African people. This is the problems we have. See, our societies are racked by these impervious ideologues, the traitors in our midst. These are the people that Africans have to fight against, to remove from their societies. You're looking at the oppressor that's far away, but the oppressor is nowhere around you. They've put people around you to keep you in check, like an expeditionary force. William Ruto is just one of them. Bola Tinubu is another one. This guy in Senegal, what's his name? Macky Sall, Alassane Ouattara. These are the people who are holding the Africans in captivity. These are the people who are telling the Africans it is better to stay in this prison of disorientation than to seek a better way, than to seek an alternative way. You watch William Ruto, He's rubbing shoulders with Emmanuel Macron. That's a bad sign. That's already a telltale sign of the times to come. Kenya is in trouble. William Ruto is talking about colonization. You see, he's saying that. What did he even say? You see, that we broke the chains, in the words of William Ruto, the president of Kenya, the presidential clown of Kenya. We broke the chains of colonialism because they were imposed on us against our will and because they were undemocratic, you see, and they were not participatory. We broke the chains of colonialism. No, Mr. Ruto, you never broke any chains. You have replaced those chains that were put on your feet. Those were shackles on your feet. You've removed the shackles on they have removed the shackles on your feet, and you have put a garrote around your neck. William Ruto, you have put a garrote around your very own neck. That's persuasive self-enslavement, as I have come to refer to it. You have all these beautiful words when you sit around white folk. You see, the European folk, you're decent, you're cultivated, you speak a very refined language, you use big terms, as we all do. The people who claim to have gone to the university, oblivious of the fact that there are people dying in Africa as a result of the politics that you run. You are not serving the interests of your people. You go around talking about uniting Africa, behind a common goal. At the same time, you forget the suffering masses of Niger. These people in Niger, can you accept it, Mr. Ruto? Huh? They tell you, Ruto, an educated African, they're telling you that Niger is the poorest country in the world, or is among the poorest country in the world. This is what the Europeans are telling you. That is the discourse of the European. And you hear these things in your ear and it doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother you. What are we talking about? Donald Trump would tell the world that African countries and Haiti are shithole countries. And we complain about this. And people get offended when they hear that. African countries and Haiti are shithole countries. Why do you blame Donald Trump when you have somebody like William Ruto, when you have somebody like Bola Tinubu, people who are going to attack, people who are actually supporting this idea of Africans going to attack another African countries at the behest of the European colonizing devils? So you prefer that the Nigerians continue to suffer, you see, suffer when they have what they deserve to make themselves better, to make their lives better. Nigerians don't have light, but they export uranium, not export. Uranium has been sequestrated from them by the French, to lighten up the French streets, the Eiffel Tower. You go to Monaco, go to Paris, go to Bordeaux, all those places are lighted up with uranium from Niger. And you go to Niger, you see the unspeakable level of poverty, wholesale destitution in that country, and all you can think about is democracy and undemocratic take of power. Is that all what bothers you, Mr. Ruto? Look at your people. You are the people working against Africa. You have not learned anything. All those words you speak when you go around white people, you sit around Emmanuel Macron, you and this president in Congo Kinshasa, you see, including Paul Kagame, and to some extent, Yoweri Museveni. You're all playing this dirty game against the African children. You're all playing this dirty game. How long are you going to play this dirty game out of spiritual impoverishment? How long are you going to continue doing this against your own conscience? Things like what happened in Niger should jot the public conscience in Africa. You should be among the people that should stay silent if you have nothing to say. You don't always have to have something to say. You know that what you're saying or what you just said is wrong. You know that. Deep down your innermost self, Ruto William, you know, I don't even want to call you William. William, what is the meaning of William? What is your other African name? William Ruto, if William is your name, what is your African name? Huh? You are the people that rejoice when Africans are being, scorned in this world of materialistic perversity and self-interested dead weight. You have an American military base in your country. What is that military base doing in Kenya? You did not suffer from the French colonialism. Your country has not suffered, but you are rubbing shoulders with the French colonial devils. You are rubbing shoulders with Emmanuel Macron. We all see that on TV. You are Emmanuel Macron's sidekick. You're hiding. You cannot hide anymore. You can't hide anymore. You are doing the dirty work because Emmanuel Macron cannot do it by himself. So you are the ones that this service, this demonic service, has been outsourced to. You can speak like that against your own conscience. William Ruto or Ruto. You see? You are the one that are fueling these proxy wars. The proxy war, or wars, really in plural. What is happening? You're trying to gang up against the people of Niger, gang up against the suffering masses of Niger. You think the military is a fool? The military is in tandem, is working in tandem with the Nigerian people or the Nigerian people. Yeah. The military is in tandem with the Nigerian people. You're talking the talk of the French. You're speaking, but the words that are coming from your mouth are the words of the French devil. People think you're the one talking. You're not the one talking. You are talking the words, you're speaking out the words of your adulterator against your own conscience. You see? What is this self-abasement in Africa? You see? What do you want in this world? If you die today, what would you think you have achieved in this world for your people? What are you going to leave behind? What is your intellectual market value, Ruto? What is your intellectual market value? Is it the books that you claim that you've read? Is it the degrees that you claim you have? No, no. You have to answer the question. What is your intellectual market value, William Ruto, the president of Kenya? What is it? What are you doing? What are we doing? Putting all these people in power or accepting these people to be in power, because it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that Africans can elect someone like William Ruto in power. You have to look at these people. You see, they're hiding in the midst of the African people. The traitors are hiding in the midst of the African people to keep the African people in check like an expeditionary force. If the white man says that, the Africans will say, oh, that's a European. I don't want you around me. So William Ruto is playing that role. The same role Bola Tinubu is playing. The same role Paul Kagame is playing. The same role this guy in Ghana, Akufo-Addo, is playing. The same role Alassane Man Ouattara is playing in the Côte d'Ivoire. The same role Macky Sall is playing. Now Macky Sall is harassing his own people. Macky Sall is torturing his own people. Ruto, what have you to say about that? When there is a coup d'etat in Senegal, you be among the people that will condemn it. Isn't it? Look at what is going on in Senegal. You are quiet. Every African leader is quiet. Look at the nature of Senegal at the moment, the political atmosphere in Senegal. You see, Sonko is nowhere to be found. That is an opposition leader. You talk about democracy so enthusiastically. This is a concept that you hold so dearly to your heart as you're trying to tell us. You're trying to tell the world. Look at what is going on in Senegal. Look at the treatment that has been meted out to Sonko because he's contesting power in Senegal. Macky Sall has been there for 2 terms. That is constitutional. Macky Sall is trying to stay in power. So they're excluding Sonko from the primary circuit of the political process. And that's okay with you. You look at the people, the distress of the people in Senegal, a politically embattled nation. You see, a sociologically shattered society, which is full of psychologically distressed masses. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for a coup d'etat. A politically embattled nation, a sociologically shattered society, and psychologically distressed masses. Poverty, deprivation, destitution, inequality, exclusion. Those are all things, among others, those are things that would generate an extra legal intervention, an extra legal military intervention. If you don't know, let me remind you about these things. You are talking about a coup d'etat. That's an outcome of something that is hideous, something that is very horrible, and altogether an insufferable burden of inequality and injustice. Remember, the Bible tells you these things. You're in the same. You come from the same. I think you come from the same country like this man, Patrick Lok Otieno Lumumba. You don't listen to your colleague. Lumumba is about your age mate. You don't listen to him. Lumumba is wasting his time teaching people who have no brain to listen, who have no ears to listen. People who like to listen to themselves. Ruto, what are you doing? Tinubu, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Mortgaging the lives of the African children, African generations, the ancestors, our African ancestors are twisting and turning in their graves, looking at what has become of us today. You would imagine that our ancestors would be expecting us to rejoice, with all what has been bequeathed to us by them. They fought a hard fight with bare hands, and they gave us a measure of liberty. That is the same liberty you're taking back to your adulterator and telling the adulterator that he or they are justified. They are justified to keep us in the position of chattels. Walter Ronnie said it. He said Guyana was assigned to the task of producing sugarcane. That Senegal was assigned the task of producing groundnut, and Ghana with Nana Akufo-Addo was assigned the task of producing cocoa. With all the wealth, the natural wealth that Ghana has, that's all that Ghana is supposed to be. Huh, Ruto? You're accepting these Europeans to outsource this war to your people because you are there. The Africans don't want this violence. The Africans want justice, because whoever comes in with injustice, whoever sows injustice shall reap calamity. It's in the Bible. And every weapon that you wield shall be broken. That's in the Bible. Proverbs 22, verse 8. Let me remind you about that. I don't have to be, Christian and all those things. I'm telling you because this is what you people think. This is what you believe. You don't believe your own children talking to you. You don't believe your own brothers and sisters telling you or reminding you about things that you're going wrong. You see, reminding you about the need for you to retrace your roots. What are you doing? Huh? What are you doing, African leaders? Your people they're wailing. Look at Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Niger. You are an educator. You're supposed to be an academic, Ruto. Ruto, you're supposed to be an academic. You don't speak like that. You don't talk that way. You see, you have to look at the trend. Look at this trend. Try to look at the problems. What caused the coups? What has caused the coups? You're looking at an outcome. You're even going to the extent of telling the world that, oh, the CEDAW or ECOWAS or whatever has to intervene to reinstate Bazoum. What the hell? They have to go and reinstate Bazoum as a democratically elected leader. You see? So you want to tell us that democracy is the only the solution? Democracy is the panacea. Hmm? Where is that democracy that is fixing all the problems? You see, the so-called liberal democracies of the West. Do you know what is going on there? Hmm? Why are you buying all these perverse concepts? You see, why are you buying all these concepts? African problems need African solutions. That is what you've been preaching. You have been preaching this. African problems need African solutions. You see, but surprisingly, even though I'm not very surprised by you, you are telling the Africans to look up to the Europeans for solutions to their problems. You have no problem with the fact that France has been exploiting Niger and all the African countries for years, for 139 years. You are lucky because your country was colonized by the British. You don't see the kind of problems that this so-called francophone African countries are facing. You don't see those problems. You are going now to side with somebody who's oppressing your own brothers in Central and West Africa. You dig? That doesn't bother you because you want to be seen around the oppressor. You want to be seen as the civilized African. You don't want to be seen as the African that is wretched. You want to be seen as the African that can stand around, you see, the European folk, the decent African. That's how you want to see yourself to be. No, you're an African. We're all in that shithole, Mr. Ruto. They're trying to outsource a war to you people. They're trying to commodify this violence and you're buying this nonsense. It's a proxy war. What's a proxy war, Mr. Ruto? Mr. Bola Tinubu? Mr. Alassane Ouattara? Mr. Nana Akufo-Addo? Mr. Macky Sall? What's a proxy war? Do you know? You know what a proxy war is? You are the same people that are going to Russia. You are against Russia. You are supporting the West, but you're going to Russia to go down on your knees and beg like miserable people, men with no dignity, perverse maniacs. You go to Russia to beg for food. When the young people in Africa need avenues, you see, to express themselves. You're going to beg for food. Do you need food in Africa? The Most High has blessed Africa with everything. Mother Africa is blessed. You're going to beg for food, beg for fertilizer. You're going to beg for food from somebody that you dislike, that you despise. Where is your honor? The Cameroonian writer, Calix Biala, she said, where is the tenacity of the African man? Where is his honor? That's a woman asking the African man, where is your tenacity? Where is your vigor? Where is your manhood? All this effeminate African man leading African children into the abyss. Africa is in dire need of rehabilitation, and all you do is criticize your own brothers that are struggling to get out of this prison of disorientation. This is unbelievable. You've not expected. They're all playing this dirty game. with the African children. They're all playing this game. Ngugi wa Thiong'o, that's a Kenyan. Ngugi has spoken about wars in Africa. And nobody's writing about these wars in Africa. No one is talking about what is causing these problems. But you're sitting there talking about the outcome of something that you barely understand, or if you do understand, that you barely acknowledge out of bad faith. Well, you know what is going on over there. But because you're talking the talk of the oppressor, you're siding with the oppressor, walking hand in glove, rubbing shoulders, rubbing elbows, walking together with the oppressor against your own people. And in the night you come back to your family. You see, you come back to your family and you try to embrace your children. That you've done what for them? What have you done for your children? In the morning you're drinking somewhere, drinking champagne with the person that is planning to oppress your children, and you come home in the evening and you sit together with your children to eat. What are you going to tell them? Huh? What are you going to tell these children? It's really preoccupying to deal with people like this. You see, the Nigerians are fighting tooth and nail. There's a close-knit fraternity in Niger. What happened in Niger is not a coup. You see, that's a civilian revolt. The soldiers accompanied this revolt. You're talking of democracy that was imposed on you. Yeah, that is what militarized bureaucracy does. And that is what the oppressor, that oppressor that you're siding with, that is what they've used on you, militarized bureaucracy. And that's exactly why there is an American military base in your country, Kenya. You dig? Militarized bureaucracy works with imposition of values. Democracy was imposed on you. Oh, what kind of democracy are we even talking about? You see? You speak of undemocratic, non-participatory. Well, now that you participate, what problems have you solved in Africa? You see? Are you better than other Africans? Are you not from that shithole country in Africa? Oh, yeah. Because when you look at yourself in the mirror, what you see is somebody else. When you look at yourself in the mirror, Mr. Ruto, you don't see what you are. You see what you have become. You see what you have become because you're not in alignment with the cosmic forces that govern the structure of your own society. You have been denatured, Mr. Ruto. You don't feel at home in Kenya. You don't feel at home in Africa because you look at Africa through the lens of the Europeans. That is what you do. You're looking at Africa through the lens of the Europeans. The African problem is not supposed to be looked upon in that way. The African problem has to be looked upon through the eyes of the African people because it is only the Africans who feel their pain. People are intending to keep Africans in perpetual servitude and abasement and subordination, and all you can do is to go and reinstate somebody who has been oppressing his people, serving the interests of the outside oppressors at the expense of his own people who are starving and suffering under mass poverty and wholesale destitution. And all you can do is to talk about democracy. Speak of colonialism and democracy. Those two things, in your mind, do they go together? Democracy and colonialism? Hmm? Do you think that democracy is going to solve the problems of colonialism? No. Colonialism has never ended, Mr. Ruto. Colonialism has never ended. They talk about post-colonialism. Now they're telling you about neo-colonialism. How can you talk of neo-colonialism, or how can you talk of post-colonialism, and then you still talk of neo-colonialism? Does it make any sense to you? Colonialism has never ended. What you have done, you've simply taken the shackles that were put on your leg You kept them aside and you went and took up the garrote and put it around your neck. You know what a garrote is? I bet your forefathers even felt better than you did because they could walk. They could walk even with the shackles on their feet. They could walk. When you put a garrote around your own neck, you suffocate. That's exactly what is coming to you. You're going to suffocate under the pressure of the Western imperialists that you're siding with, that you're romancing with. They suffocate you. How can you explain the fact that Africa has all these resources, but we are still the wretched of the earth? People who nobody respects in this world. You see, Africans have no respect. No one respects Africans in this world. People can say whatever they want about African people. When the Africans are trying to affirm themselves as humans, you're there telling the African people to stay in the prison of disorientation. You see, you are only emphasizing the African state of disorientation, Mr. Ruto. That's exactly what you're doing. You, Bola Tinubu, this guy in Ghana, Akufo-Addo, Alassane Ouattara, particularly Macky Sall. You see, and this guy, this clown in Guinea-Bissau, all of you guys. That is not the way you interact in this world. You see, show some dignity. Stand up like a man and speak for yourself and your people. We can't accept this. We can't continue to deal with this pain. We deal with this dishonor, this treachery. You talk so nice. Oh, democracy. Oh, they've toppled the democratic leader. Okay, so a democratic leader is supposed to be there and oppress his people and starve his people. You see, and everything is supposed to be okay just because the person is supposedly democratically elected. What kind of logic is that? Are we supposed to accept that as, you know, as like a logic that is not supposed to be contested? That's kind of weird. It's immoral and altogether shameful. Can you believe this? Oh, there's a distressing poverty of sanity when Africans rely on these types of perverse individuals to govern them in the name of democracy. What is this thing called democracy that has brought so much scorn to the African people who can barely feed themselves? What is this thing called democracy? You have to question these things, you know. You have to question these things. It's quite sad. You see, there is a sorrowful absurdity when Africans are crying. They're crying in this prison, crying of distress in this prison, and their leaders are telling them, you have to stay where you are because life is better in that prison. Go and attack Niger. Go there and attack Niger. You don't see what is coming to you. You think you're down there in Kenya. You don't see what is coming to you. It's not going to be a regional conflagration, as some of you are thinking, that is going to end over there in Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali. It's going to be a full-blown continental conflagration, irrespective of where you are. They take you to Paris. You see, they show you Monaco. You go and buy boats there. They give you houses to buy. And suddenly you start to think that you're one of the elites of the world. You're not. You're not in that club. You'll never get into that club. You are a tool they're using against your own people, against your own conscience. You're a tool. You see? You have to back off. You see? You are the ones trying to embrace this proxy wars in Africa. You're playing with the African people on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're stretching your hand, to your own oppressor. You're stretching the hand to the oppressor, trying to embrace the proxy war, telling the oppressor you can outsource this violence to me. So a proxy war is about the strategic outsourcing of violence. You are ready to get this violence outsourced to you. against your own better judgment, against the will of your people. Is that democratic? Did your people tell you to criticize Niger? Did the Kenyan people tell you, Ruto, to criticize the people of Niger? Because the suffering that the people of Kenya are facing is exactly the same type of suffering that the people of Niger are facing. So what if the people of Kenya rise up today and say, well, you have to leave power? What would you say? Do you think the people of Kenya are okay for you criticizing the people of Niger? When they're trying to feed themselves, they're trying to go out of this suffering, this destitution that has been forced upon them. You think that's okay? It's not okay. Africa is in dire need of rehabilitation. Yeah. We don't need leaders who cannot stand up for the African people. It's just a waste of time. All right. I'll leave it at that.